Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Today, we are speaking with James Guzzetta. James helps people navigate their path to consciousness. That sounds exciting, doesn't it? So welcome, James. I'm really excited to learn how you got started on this journey, what it is, and how you help people. And I've got some questions for you about some of the things that you've been posting over on Facebook. So welcome to the show. Tell us about you.
Well, great, Jill. Thank you very much. And this is a real pleasure and honor to be here on this podcast with you. Let's see, where to start. I mean, basically, I've been involved with music all my life since the age of 4, studied classical music. I moved up to the Bay Area from San Diego. And from there, I got involved with, I had some experiences when I was young, 13, 11, even when I was 4, but these kind of instilled a curiosity in me that when I came up to the Bay Area to do graduate work and kind of explore, that I really got into various things from self-hypnosis to various spiritual practices. I always had an interest in religion and spiritual trying to understand why do we have so many religions? I mean, does that make sense? And those religions go to war with each other over their ideologies. Something's not quite right with that picture. So as I kind of got into my practices, I also got into corporate America, and I spent 25 years there, followed by 2 medical device startups, which I led during the next several years. And towards the end of that, my business partner of 20 years and friend had just unexpectedly passed away. And with that, I was challenged with not only dealing with the loss of him, but also what do I do with the startup company I had? And the shortcut to that story is that I ended up having to close it down. And then I was left with the question, well, what do I do with the rest of my life? And right at that point, it was almost like this surge of information coming back from 4 years old all the way through my life. Talk about you love to work with people, you want to help others, and how is it that I can use my experience and my insights and tapping into who I am, be able to share that in a way with others that can really make a difference in their lives. I see myself, we call ourselves healers, but I really see myself as a guide. I don't heal. I facilitate people healing themselves and waking others up to that fact that they are the healer in their life, that I can, with my experience, help you get to the point where you can actually achieve that. And so this is where my work has really centered. It's been about developing workshops as tools and as methods that can help people move from where they are right now, at least a step or 2, or maybe even to the point where they become fully able to heal themselves and also help others. So I love that kind of work. I mean, it's just, there's nothing else I can think of that I'd ever want to do. So this is where I am now. So as a result, I mean, I listen to so many people. I love new information. I love new insights. I love the kind of opening that a new realization in our science, in our ancient wisdom, opening to our ancient wisdom, opening to the lineages that we all are, but we've kind of forgotten. You know, we kind of operate like we're this module in a society, and we do all the things that we feel are leading to our success in that society. But what I believe we always feel with that is that there's something lacking when we just take that approach. And so connecting with the lineage that you are, think of it, you know, there's probably over 1 billion people that have contributed to who you are right now in this moment. And that is not something we keep as part of ourselves. So it's kind of like reminding us in the work that I've shaped here, and bringing to that picture ways that you can now practically and pragmatically move from that point of lesser awareness to greater awareness. And then from there, moving into realizing or remembering who we are and the fact that we can heal ourselves.
Yeah, that's pretty profound. And I relate to what you're saying in terms of reaching a point in your life where you just want to help people because you've figured out this is the place that you're supposed to be, and you're just moving into it. And the things that you have to share really can help reshape how people experience the life that they're living right now through connecting with their actual consciousness. We're conscious in that we create our reality, and we have ways of walking through life that we view it, that we also have this other part of ourselves, which I feel that we're born, it's not awake when we're born. We have to actually learn how to activate it, which takes me to that post that you put on Facebook the other day about whales and dolphins, and that dolphins have to teach their young how to breathe. And I think whales do too. They're just not innately born with the idea that they have to surface in order to stay alive, even though they live in a medium that requires them to have this practice, and that they can put half their brain asleep. But the part of the brain that requires them to remember to surface, it's not automatic in them like it is in humans. Humans are born, they
Right.
take their first breath, and they keep taking that breath until they die. They don't have to think about it. But aquatic mammals do have to think about it. So when I read that post, it hit me that humans are kind of like that, and that we're born with half of our brain already asleep, that part that's connected to the greater consciousness that we are all a part of. And in the search to try to make sense of our world, we create paradigms without necessarily having to wake that part up. And once you do wake it up, the power that you have to heal yourself, to create a life that you want to live, to make an impact on the world around you, suddenly wakes up too. But it's not an innate thing. You're not born with just like, you know what you're doing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a couple little things. One, it's true that as human infants, you know, typically we get spanked when we're born, and that kind of shucks our system into taking a breath, our first breath, and then our biology, the evolution of our biology has actually created the ability to autonomically continue to breathe after that, just as our heart continues to beat and other elements within our body, they kick in autonomically and they continue that way. That's not the case with whales and dolphins, although they're also mammals, right? So they need to breathe, but they live in water. And like you say, the parent really needs to nudge and encourage, actually help physically the infant whale or dolphin towards the surface to be able to take its first breath. Otherwise, they will drown. So they don't have anything innate within them or autonomically evolved as part of their biology to do that. So what they've done amazingly is to develop kind of split their brain in such a way that half of it can sleep, go dormant, the other stays conscious. And it keeps a sense of timing so that it can go to the surface, get a breath or two or whatever, and then come back down, and they can hold their breath for amazingly long periods of time. Well, the thing about that is that it takes a conscious effort on the parent and the infant's side in the whales and dolphins to be able to learn that new habit of surfacing and breathing. I think, and this is where the story went, that the correlation to humans is that we may have innately within us the ability to be aware of our quest for, I'll call it a spiritual connection or something that is larger than us, where we open up, almost like taking that breath. But in some cases, in most cases, I'd actually say that we need a conscious effort to do that, to learn how to do that, to learn that it's even possible to do that. And so when you look at human beings, that is the correlation I see with whales and dolphins, that we can achieve that awareness and experience of a spiritual connection. And through practice, we can make that, just as turning off half the brain at a time and staying conscious of breathing as the dolphins do, to be able to continue practicing that connection. For me, I was really fortunate in that since the time I was 4 years old, my connection to music was my spirit line. And so, I was able to really evolve a kind of a relationship with that it wasn't, at first I thought it might have been an escape from the surroundings that I had in my life at the time, which were, for a little kid, were pretty horrendous. But what I was able to do was realize that, no, it's not just an escape. This is something that is real. And when I am in that place of fully realizing and resonating to spiritual or energy, let's call it, that there's amazing things that can be done, because it opens up, awakens within the body the knowledge and the wisdom that we're already gifted with. And that can rise to our consciousness and be able to be practiced as well. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that reference to the story, because that's one of my favorite.
I love it. It's so true that we're surrounded with energy. We are part of the energy field that is consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it, the Great Spirit. And the connection is there. It's always there, but we're so programmed as we're raised to have to fit in these boxes and to ignore that calling, or to have that calling channeled a certain way, depending on what your parents have been programmed to believe. And once you break free of that paradigm, just the freedom in being able to accept the connection and to experience it. And the connection is an experience. It's not just like something that's there. Much like breathing is an experience. We do it automatically, but when we consciously do it, it has profound impacts on our body. You can change the mechanisms of how your chemistry is working through breath
Yeah,
work.
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me to explore those interweavings of how they work. So you're going to do workshops, or you have workshops coming up. Let's talk about that a little bit. What do you explore in those workshops?
Sure.
How do they work? When are you having them?
Certainly. Yeah. So just a quick synopsis of them. I usually start with telling your story. It's a group-based exploration into the experiences that we've had, both, as we call them, negative, positive, and learning what both of those really mean to us. You know, we normally ascribe negative experiences to things like traumas or accidents or things that really impact us physically, mentally, emotionally. But one thing I found is that as we're able to talk about those experiences, we can now start exploring them in a way that turns negatives into the learning process that I truly believe they represent, to become more of a positive. And even the positive experiences can be seen as things that are anywhere from heralding to just a kind of an awakening, you know, like a nudge to awaken that aspect of yourself. So many times we live with the self-critic, you know, which is always looking at, on one hand, how we failed, how we made a mistake, how we did these things that didn't turn out well. But really what I see them to be is learning experiences, kind of like how what is the term for someone who's doing something but feels like they're doing it as a falsehood or fake.
Imposter.
Yeah, thank you. The imposter syndrome. That's a part of the learning process. I mean, when you start off on something, you don't know much about what it is you're studying, but excuse me. But when you get to somewhere close to a midpoint, you haven't yet mastered, but you're still a student, and where are you in that? You know, there's an identity dissonance. And so the thing is to realize that that is part of the learning process. We can continue moving through that without putting a lot of attention on it, because it's an assessment. You know, this is our self-critic going in again. So we can let that go and continue moving through our learning process and achieve what we want to achieve. That led to an insight where some people in the group had difficulty either remembering what someone else just said, because part of the process of telling your story is that you've got a group of listeners and a speaker. And that speaker, after they finish, the listeners will then feed back what they understood, not just heard with their ears, spoken word, but saw and felt, and the full connection, right? And so the more that we exercise that, the better we actually can listen. And so it led me to form another workshop, which was called Deep Listening. And that gets into the real root of where I'm starting to see now many of our health problems, many of our social problems, and when it comes to the use of our inventions like technology and civilization, education, etc., a lot of those problems have to do with how we listen. The scope of our listening, meaning, when we're formulating something, do we think like many American Indian cultures do, think out 7 generations to the future? Also, look at 7 generations to the past. How is what we're doing deviating from our lineage, or what does it mean to our lineage? And how is it going to impact our future generations? Core values is another part of that. And that is what are the values that we actually hold within us, like our awareness of spiritual being, that can lend itself towards manifestation of new inventions, new innovations, etc., that are helpful to others, rather than things that have a very small, narrow kind of a benefit, but you look at the impact of the side effects and it's like, whoa, it's very devastating, or it can be. So this deep listening is the next thing, which I'm actually offering a free webinar for people who are interested in learning more about it this Saturday at 9 a.m. And well, unfortunately, like this podcast is not going to be coming out until November, so it's okay. But I'm going to be continue offering these. So I'll share my website later. So the thing is, that led to so it was kind of an organic outgrowth from one workshop to the next and next. And it ends up where I have evolved the telling your story into 3 categories. It starts with looking at our past, looking at where we want to go, and looking at manifesting that desire or set of core values that we want to manifest in our lives. That could be a career, it could be like a relationship, it could be many things. It's all in how you want to apply it. So the thing is, how do we get from where we are now to that point so that we can actually start manifesting? And that leads into rites of passage, which is another workshop that I do. Ideally, if someone was interested in this journey, and the name of my company is called Journey Into, it's looking at each one of these as a journey in itself, but they're all interconnected. So they almost fall into it's somewhat a sequence of workshops or courses. So let's see, I think those are the majors. There's a couple other workshops I'm evolving right now. One is called Awakening the Sage Within. I've done a lot of shamanic practice, working with various either shamans or others who are practicing shamanism. And what I love about shamanism is that it's rooted in the planet we're living on. It's rooted in the universe we're living on, in a physical and emotional and mental way. And what that calls forth, at least in me, and I see this in others as well, is a kind of full resonance of being here now. It's like we can be as present as possible, and to continue evolving our sense of presence, so that we can actually start working together from that basis of presence with core values, and the other things that I've been mentioning here. So, the idea is that, these things I think can be very helpful for a lot of people. And that's what I offer.
They sound to me as though you're doing the exact thing that I had this podcast all about. And that's moving the world to being a kinder, gentler, more sustainable place. As people connect with source or the energy, or they're able, as you were talking, this came to me that being present isn't just being in the moment, it's accepting what's in the past and what's in the future as they meet in the moment. The moment always is shifting. You're never in the moment. You're always moving. It's a flow. Life is a flow. Energy is always moving. It's always vibrating. Nothing is static in the world as we perceive it. And nothing is solid.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And if I could share another story, on one of the shamanic journeys that I took, this is looking for your power animal. And this, one of the standard journeys is you're walking through a meadow, you see this incredible, huge tree in the distance. You're walking in your light body towards it, okay? So this is the little bit of a slight disconnect here, because when you're talking about grounding, your feet are typically on the ground, right? But in your light body, you're able to move without your feet touching, yet you're still grounded. Well, it presupposes that you already have the experience of grounding and you're still maintaining that, right? And this is like the now includes all. It includes the past, includes the present, and the future. And so Akashic records is where we, and this is equated with the eighth chakra. The Akashic records are the record of everything that has happened from the beginning of time, which never really started. I think everything has just been on this continuum and continues on this continuum, and energy is flowing through and creating and destroying everything as part of its process, right? This is why we have change. And so my experience was going through the tree into the earth, and then following this stream down to a cavern deep in the earth. And this is where you meet your animal, your power animal, right? And I'm looking around in this cavern. It's beautiful, but I don't see anything. And then I start hearing this, and I turn over, and this gigantic hummingbird, right, just hovering in air next to me. Well, I come out of that journey. The next day, I'm sitting on my deck in the backyard here, and I didn't know I didn't have a hummingbird bird feeder at the time. So this one hummingbird comes by, and it just hovers there, and then another and another, and pretty soon I've got 4 or 5 hummingbirds just kind of hovering right around me for almost 3 minutes, actually. And it just struck me. On one hand, I did this as a visual exercise, the journey, but here are the hummingbirds floating right in front of me, right in the space in front of me. So what does that mean to me? Do I just, oh, that's cool, that's a nice experience, and chalk it off? Or what I did instead was kind of took it in and said, well, what is hummingbird? And I later learned that hummingbird is the representation of the Akashic record. It's also connected with the 6th chakra. So the thing is, we have the ability to now visualize and be able to realize our connection with our entire lineage, right? Everything that has been part of our lineage up to this exact moment. And then here we are, you and I and others who are listening to this. Well, of course, they're going to be listening to it on a little delay, but that is not so much important. It's like the fact that we're here right now, whatever that relative time is to me the miracle of it. And now what are we doing? That's where the question comes up. What are we doing here? What is our purpose? What is the meaning that we create in our life? Is the meaning created by something out there, or is it us? And I think that every time I do a workshop or I have an interaction with someone in the workshop or a friend, it continues to evoke this sense that, we're here to do, if we can listen to ourselves, and this is where deep listening comes in. It's not just listening to others, it's listening to ourselves while someone else is speaking, or even when we're just by ourselves. The ability to go inside and listen to, but not get carried away with each one of the thoughts and feelings, but to see what they're saying to you. And when you understand that, you realize what your purpose is. I mean, it comes out of that. For me, it had. And so this is my conjecture, and it seems to be true so far, at least, in my work with others.
I couldn't agree with you more. It opens the door. I just have so many thoughts about this. I've been on Akashic journeys, and I went on a journey to the Akashic records place. I had somebody guide me there instead of going for me. And this place that I visit is underground, but it's not underground. It's like you can see the sky, but there's
Yeah.
also a river, and the Akashic Records is past this place that I go, but it's along this path that's by the river, and you cross over the river to get to it. Which, when you were talking about the river and the tree and the going underground, it was just like, oh, there's this common thread in there. It just kind of validated something for me. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. The thing is that we have, when we're in a place that is our true self, that we reflect each other in a much clearer manner. And my question that comes out of that, and this is the thing, it's like everything I do ends up with something, but then the something leads to another question, right? And so you're always asking yourself, because it's always a learning process. Things are always changing, learning. So now that we understand each other on a clear plane, what is it that we do together as a potential, as a way of interacting in a more meaningful manner with each other, such that we can, create I think there's certain visions that we have when we're in those places, and those visions are meant to be realized, I believe. When you're in that place, when you're centered in that place, there's a fantasy that it comes sometimes when you're outside of that or not directly connected to it. But I believe that those visions are meant to be manifested. And then, so the thing is, how is it we can do that in a mutually beneficial, cooperative way? And if you don't mind, I'd like to touch on one thing that I think is really important to moving from typically where, and like a lot of psychologists and scientists say, over 50% of the population lives their life with about 5% consciousness. Okay. And so when you're awakened to the fact that your consciousness is something that you can actually practice and put into place on anything in your life, what is it that you do? Well, we're kind of weaned by our schooling and by jobs into a competitive environment. The competition is based on a couple core values, which is, I need to make sure that I'm going to be the one who gets the carrot, who gets the brass ring, who gets the acknowledgement for what I know to do or what I can do, right? And it produces some really amazing stuff. I mean, our technologies are a way of interacting with other cultures. I mean, all of this has been part of the evolved from competitive environment. Well, what about moving from competition to cooperation? What is it that is cooperation? Yeah, exactly. Because what you're doing is not sacrificing competition. You're not letting it go. You're just raising it to a higher level of wisdom, which says, hey, if I'm competing individually against another person or others, my energy is going out into the competing component of it, not the creating component of it. What is it that I can do if I shifted to cooperation that involves competition, but the positive elements of competition? And there's like, it started falling into these steps. And so becomes a method by which you can move from a pure competition into how did you call it?
Cooperation.
Cooperation, yeah.
It's based on abundance, and everybody wins. It's pushing everybody up, and you're moving up with them. It doesn't matter who's in the lead, because the lead will change depending on what needs to happen next. But the end goal is that everybody succeeds, or everybody realizes what they're hoping to realize out of the event. Because in competition, one person wins, but it doesn't have to be that way, because winning is personally defined always. There might be a prize, but not everybody views the prize the same way. It's allowing everybody to reach the realization of the thing that they're striving for, with each of us helping each other. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does, yeah. And so, I mean, for example, like, how is it that we can change our education to incorporate the idea of cooperation, and not necessarily ignore competition, because the competition helps you with, if you apply it correctly, can help you with honing your own skills, because you need to have that in order to compete. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's beneficial if it can be used in a more cooperative manner. So, in my background, I was both soloist and of music. I was both a soloist, and I was also involved in an ensemble. There are two different kinds of listening. They're very different in terms of honing skills. Okay, I was going to say competition, but it's not competition. You can enter competitions, and I did in my early life, and those were satisfying for a brief moment. That you achieve something, that your family, your friends, your loved ones are proud of you for the effort that you've put into it and achieved, but then it fades very quickly. This is what I found. And I even was granted and honored with being a guest solo with the San Diego Symphony. So even that faded away fairly quickly as the positive experience feedback from it. And that's always kind of sat with me like, well, okay, then why are we continuing to educate ourselves in competitive manners? We have answers to questions that are being asked, but there's answers. And so there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. And that becomes one of the little tools for looking at how we edge on competition. The more right answers we know in our lexicon, the better off we can compete. The more capabilities we have in the area that we're involved, the better we can compete. But it doesn't satisfy another thirst inside. And that's kind of like the need to breathe, just like the whales and dolphins. And for us, the spiritual connection. So how is it that we can now use competition cooperation as a method for looking at how we can open up that portal within us to a spiritual, much longer and broader experience of who we are, and that way with being with each other,
and how that impacts each other. So you were talking about being a soloist, but also part of an ensemble. When you're a soloist, you hone your personal skill, which is very much integral in an ensemble, which has a much richer, broader impact. But each one of those is an individual who's come together, and they each are experts in their area. But individually, they can compete with each other, but together, that power that comes from the combination of their expertise, it's just like, it's what pushes like the envelope of possibilities. And it happens in technology, it happens in consciousness. As more and more people realize their potential and practice that, the more impact they have on their communities around them, their families, their countries, and then the whole world. And that's my mission.
That's great. No, that's wonderful.
To make people aware that the change is happening and they can be part of it.
Yes. And where the competition really makes sense is when you can apply it to yourself. Continue to improve. Look at every area in your life where you want to make a change and where you want to make a difference in your community. Those are the areas where you apply the competitiveness. When you're looking at social ensemble community, this is where you really need to apply. It's a different set of skills. The listening is different. I'm listening internally, not and as a soloist, to the things that are going on inside me. and if my brain neurological connection to my fingers is not such that I can do a certain kind, like, let's call it in Baroque music, they're called mordants. They're little ornamentations. If you cannot do that in the style properly of that music, you're really taking away from the reinterpretation of that music. So the thing is, really apply yourself to learning how to do those things. And there's guides out there to help you with that too. A trill, second, third finger, third, fourth finger, fourth, fifth finger. Those things, the fourth and fifth, are the hardest one to master because we have more facility just as a human being with our first three digits. And to be able to master that it ends up in a kind of a mini breakthrough, because now that neurological connection is established when you finally get that capability, and your thinking, your feeling about it is completely shifted. So small things can make big changes. And that's another workshop I forgot to mention, that I call it Small Things, Big Changes, or Small Steps, Big Changes, which is a focus on mindfulness, but it's also incorporating some of these elements of competition and cooperation, deep listening. So they're all kind of variations on a theme of each other, as a set of workshops and courses. And I think that it provides a kind of continuum, so that same energy is flowing through all of them, just as it does through our universe and multiverse.
Yep, it does. So how do people get in touch with you, James?
So let's see. I have a website link that you can go to. I can give you that link, I guess, and we can post it. And then that's probably the best way to do it. You can also reach me in my email, and that is simply james@journeyinto, spelled IN and the number 2.com. So I can send you both of those for posting. And those are the best ways to reach me.
And what's the one thing you want to leave the audience with today? There's been so much. Good luck picking the one thing.
Yeah, the one thing. That reminds me of the Jack Palance movie, it's just one thing, What is that one thing? Well, okay. And what he meant, at least, was it's focus of your entire life force on one thing. Well, what is that one thing that you want to focus on? To me, it's like we are divine beings, but we forget that we are, and we start behaving and thinking and feeling like something that is not divine. And it's that movement from that place to awakening to your potential, and then finding, whether it's me or other people who can help guide you, to be able to follow your path from there. And your passions can be a guide for yourself, your navigational guide, but you can follow that to a place where you can create your own rite of passage into a essentially new you. And that new you will find other new others out there. And this is where I believe there's a new community that's starting to form on a global level. And we're seeing a lot of evidence through amazing people. And, I'm just doing my part that I feel important in this, just as all of us are. So with that, I thank you for this opportunity.
Well, I thank you so much for joining me today. This has been fascinating.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the U World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the U World Order or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.